of resentment, which is
School resentment
killing the art of reading.
comes from the other side, and it has largely destroyed the art of reading. It has given us the amazing phenomenon of multiculturalism. My favorite sentence in the book upon which you are holding your hand goes,
as if I'm swearing to.
if multiculturalism, rather good, if multiculturalism meant Cervantes, then who could protest?
Yeah.
But of course, multiculturalism doesn't mean Cervantes. It is not as though they are urging us to read Cervantes rather than Shakespeare or Dickens. Not so at all. They are asking us to read extremely inadequate Chicano writers. Now, I have no objection whatsoever to writers of any background being read. But as I also remark in one of my favorite sentences of the book, the biblical 80 years and 10 on the whole still holds for us. If science came along and saw to it that we all lived 140 years on the average, then at the moment there would be no canonical problem. But we have 3,000 years of major imaginative literature in the West. We have a plethora
And you are
of value.
suggesting it is about to become marginal?
It has been marginalized. It has been substantially marginalized. People are getting doctorates. People are getting undergraduate majors in literature or English, or call it what you will, in thousands of American colleges and universities, and this is not hyperbole, who have never read a play by Shakespeare, have never read one of the Canterbury Tales of Chaucer, who have never read a novel by Charles Dickens or a poem by William Wordsworth.
All right, stop. Let me just stop you there because I want to get to this in a sense. Why? What would Professor Bloom say they'll get by reading Shakespeare and Chaucer?
Oh, I can go on. I can go on.
I know
for
that's
some time
for the rest
on
of the
this.
evening, but I've got 15 minutes.
I know of that, sir. Well, in the first place, I would say cognitive power. That is to say, an increase in one's own ability to think and one's own ability to talk on the basis of that thinking. And the next would be rhetorical power, the ability to understand better the uses of metaphor, which according to Aristotle was the special mark of genius in every one of us. But beyond all that, a real capacity for apprehending otherness, for, on the one hand, realizing that we are trapped inside our own mortality, and on the other, that our only hope of getting beyond that trap of mortality is to have some real sense of other selves. We read many books, is the ancient adage, because we cannot know enough people. You are still a young man. I am now getting to be a rather older man. One discovers as one gets older that it's difficult to know more and more people. That your old friends have pretty much said what they have to say to you, or you to them, and it's harder to make friends. One goes back to books because one cannot possibly know enough people. And I suppose it's deeper really than that. Memory is the major element in cognition, in everything that we call the humanities. If you cannot remember, then you can't think, and you can't imagine, and you can't write, and you can hardly read. If you have shallow authors chosen only for political reasons, or because supposedly they will make people of one ethnic background or another somehow feel good
Self-esteem
about
is, or some
themselves,
sense of knowing,
raise self-esteem,
a connection to your
or that
past.
ridiculous metaphor we now call empowerment, which is cheerleading, so far as I can tell. If you do that, you will not augment memory. You will not cause the mind to grow. You will put people into a state of another kind of poverty, a poverty that the School of Resentment does not seem to care about. You know, poverty as imaginative need, poverty as imaginative lack.
We could have a whole program just on this, and I want to move beyond it, but does it have to be, I mean, where is there a recognition on your part, at least of giving some ground to some recognition that there may be merit in terms of recognizing the literary history of an ethnic group?
I give a great deal of ground on that. But I point out in many places, not always in that book, the oddity that it is by no means the best, the strongest, the most interesting writers of such groups who are being studied and exalted. As it happens, the best African American poet by light years is a man named Jay Wright, Jaywright. He is difficult and complex. He works in terms of Dogon mythology, West African mythology, and a vast range of European learning. He is just too difficult for Afro-American specialists to bother with, and they shrug him off. They do this to a considerable extent with the next most eminent poet, the late Robert Hayden, whom they also find too dense and too aesthetic for them. There is a brilliant young woman poet, Thylias Moss, Thylias Moss, who's an African American. She too has very inadequate.
Now, people have
recognition.
pointed out that, and this